Welcome to Neo and Jiho Part 6. How do you say I love you too in your mother tongue? Let me learn from you too, thank you. As promised, Neo gave Toomey a call that afternoon after the stylist had left and she was all dressed up. It was time for her to head downstairs since Jiho was waiting for her. She felt a wave of nerves wash over her, but she had to pull herself together, remembering the way Jiho looked at her the night before made her feel all fluttery inside. She shook off those thoughts. She couldn't let her feelings get the best of her at that moment. Honestly, she had no clue about how he felt. She stepped out of the room and walked slowly toward the grand staircase. Downstairs, Jiho stood near the foot of the stairs, fingers adjusting his bow tie. The color matched Neo's dress, deep red, a quiet signal only he understood. He had picked it out days ago, thinking of her. He glanced up the staircase. She wasn't there yet. His chest buzzed with a quiet energy he didn't quite recognize. Jiho was used to structure, control. Business meetings didn't shake him. Media events didn't touch him. But this stirred something deeper. He remembered something suddenly. A small velvet box, hidden in his coat pocket upstairs. The necklace. He had it made after Neo arrived. Nothing flashy, just simple elegance, a silver chain with a single stone that caught the light like morning dew. He hadn't known how to give it to her. Words felt too small. Quietly, Jiho stepped away and returned moments later with the box in hand. Then he saw her. Neo had appeared at the top of the staircase. His breath stalled. She moved slowly, every step smooth and controlled. Her ponytail swung gently over her shoulder, the red fabric wrapped around her like poetry. Jiho's eyes traced the curve of her arms, the line of her jaw, the calm power in her posture. She looked like grace. Neo saw him, standing still and waiting. She noticed the way he was holding something, a small box. When she reached the final step, Jiho didn't speak. He simply opened the box and revealed the necklace inside. The stone glimmered softly. Neo's eyes widened just slightly. "You got this for me?" she asked. He nodded. "It's beautiful." Her voice was quiet, steady. Jiho held the necklace out and gently motioned toward her. "Can I?" he asked, just above a whisper. Neo turned around slowly. She lifted her ponytail with both hands, exposing the soft curve of her neck. Jiho stepped forward. As his fingers reached for the clasp, they brushed lightly against her skin. His breath caught. Her neck was warm, delicate, and so close. The scent of her hair, the warmth of her shoulder, it sent a jolt through him. His chest tightened. For a second, his fingers fumbled. His skin felt alive. Every nerve seemed to wake up. He fastened the clasp slowly, trying not to linger, but unable to stop himself from noticing everything. The curve of her nape, the tiny hairs at the edge of her neck, the soft glow of her skin. Neo felt his breath near her ear. She stayed still, her hands holding her ponytail aside. His body was close, too close, and yet it felt comforting. Her heart beat louder. She hadn't expected that moment to feel so intimate. His presence wrapped around her like a blanket. Warm, nervous, safe. When he stepped back, the silence was deep. Neo turned slowly, fingers brushing the pendant gently. Their eyes met. Neither spoke. Jiho was thinking, she belongs in this moment. She belongs here. Neo was thinking, his world doesn't feel distant anymore. It feels like mine, too. For a full second, neither looked away. Outside, the black car waited quietly. Neo walked beside Jiho down the stairs and toward the door, her steps soft but sure. He opened the door for her without words. As the car pulled away, Neo glanced out the window, watching the buildings blur into motion. Jiho kept glancing toward her without realizing. The way she sat, straight, graceful, present, made him feel a strange mix of peace and nervous energy. She belonged here. That was clear now. The engagement party was waiting, and Neo, the woman with calm fire, was walking into the lion's den, not with fear, but with quiet strength. The murmur of guests spread like waves across the grand hall, each conversation blending into the next as a luxurious haze hovered in the air. Crystal chandeliers shimmered overhead, casting a soft glow on polished marble floors that stretched beneath the elegance of silk gowns and tailored tuxedos. It was a night crafted for memory, and yet none expected what would unfold when Jiho and Neo arrived. The moment they stepped onto the red carpet, time slowed. Not in a way that demanded attention, but in a way that earned it. The fabric glittered with flecks of silver as light danced over her, each movement like poetry set to a heartbeat. Her shoulders were bare, smooth, and poised, and her dark curls framed her face in soft waves. She held her head high, not out of pride, but out of grace, as if she knew the world had tried to dim her, and now she chose to shine regardless. Jiho walked beside her with ease and quiet confidence, his tailored suit molded perfectly to his frame, his chest broad, his movements precise. But his eyes, that was where his pride glowed. He looked at Neo not like a man showing off a date, but like someone watching a star he thought he'd only read about. His lips curled into a subtle smile whenever she glanced his way. Their hands didn't touch, but the space between them buzzed with connection. Heads turned. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Whispers filled the room, some admiring, others questioning. People who never cared about anyone's entrance found themselves leaning in, wondering, who is she? Neo knew they were staring. She felt every gaze like a spotlight warming her skin. Still, she didn't flinch or fidget. Her fingers remained at her side, relaxed but alert. Her lips held a soft expression, not a smile, but something wiser, deeper. Jiho whispered something quietly near her ear, and her eyes lit with a small laugh, a private moment shared in a public space. To many, it seemed like a fairy tale entry, but for Neo, it was a quiet triumph. Just yesterday, she wasn't sure if she belonged in these rooms with these people. And now, walking beside Jiho, she wasn't asking permission anymore. The music rose gently, like a whisper in the wind turning into song. It was a soft jazz tune, the kind that lingered in the soul long after the last note fell. Jiho held out his hand to Neo, who accepted without hesitation. The crowd slowly parted to give them space, like waves making room for the moon's reflection. Jiho's hand found the small of Neo's back, firm but tender, guiding her to the center of the floor. His fingers curled gently, not possessive, but protective. Neo placed her hand on his shoulder, her fingertips grazing the fabric of his jacket, feeling the energy beneath. As they began to move, every eye in the room turned to them, drawn by something they couldn't explain. Their dance wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud or choreographed. It was natural and rhythmic, like breathing. Every step Jiho took matched Neo's flow effortlessly, like they'd been dancing for years, even though this was their first. It was the way he looked at her, like she was the answer to a question he'd carried for a lifetime. It was the way Neo leaned into him, not just with her body, but with trust. Neo felt her heart thrum inside her chest, uncertain yet comforted. The space between them was electric but not chaotic. It was full of stillness and safety. The room faded away, and all she saw was Jiho's eyes, deep and unwavering. She smiled, soft and unsure, the kind that said, "I don't know how I got here, but I'm glad I did." For the guests watching, their movements told a story that had no words. It was the way Jiho paused slightly to let Neo spin gently, letting her shine, before pulling her back into his warmth. It was the way Neo's heel glided across the polished floor, the hem of her gown trailing behind like a silent witness to something beautiful blooming. Some guests whispered in awe. Others stared, unsure if what they were seeing was real. A few clutched their partner's hands, suddenly reminded of their own first dances. And Yura, she stared with disbelief sinking into her chest. The woman she didn't expect to show up was now captivating the very stage she thought she'd own. Jiho had never looked at her like that. When the music ended, Neo and Jiho paused, breathless but calm. Their eyes locked one last time before stepping back to reality, unsure what the world would say next, but silently, promising to face it together. From a quiet corner of the room, Yura watched the dance unfold, her jaw tight, her fingers gripping the stem of her wine glass just a little too hard. The smile she wore was practiced, like a mask sewn onto her skin. But beneath it, a storm was brewing. Neo's presence had caught her off guard. Jiho's gaze, usually distant and polite, now glowed with warmth and admiration. And none of it was for her. It wasn't just jealousy, it was fear. Yura had built this evening like a stage for her own triumph, carefully planning every detail to show she had moved on, risen, evolved. She hadn't expected Jiho to attend, and she certainly hadn't expected him to arrive arm in arm with a woman who seemed born to shine. Neo wasn't just stunning. She radiated a quiet strength, the kind that made people lean in. Every glance Jiho gave Neo was like a mirror reflecting what Yura had once hoped for. Her colleagues were murmuring, some nudging each other, eyes flicking from Neo to Jiho to her. They weren't talking about the occasion anymore. They were talking about the unexpected woman. Her fiancé was nearby, chatting with guests, seemingly unaware of the shifting air. But Yura felt it. The humiliation crept in like cold water seeping through cracks. She could feel people watching her, not with admiration, but with pity, curiosity, and a touch of schadenfreude. The very people who whispered behind her back at work, doubting her leadership, were now exchanging amused glances, silently taking note. She glanced toward Minjun, her brother, hoping for refuge. He leaned in close, voice low and concerned. "Is everything okay?" he asked gently. Yura gave a small nod, forcing her lips to stretch into a smile, but it felt brittle, like it could shatter with one more whisper. She took a deep breath. The party was far from over, but her control over it was slipping fast. The woman with Jiho wasn't just a guest, she was becoming the centerpiece of everyone's attention. And Yura, dressed in designer silk, surrounded by powerful friends, felt suddenly invisible. In that moment, her facade cracked just slightly, and she knew the night wasn't going to be hers. Minjun stood near the edge of the dance floor, his eyes quietly trailing Neo's every move. There was something in her face that tugged at a memory buried deep in his mind. Her smile, the slight way her head tilted when she listened. Her posture, gentle yet assured. It wasn't just familiarity, it was déjà vu with a pulse. He watched her closely, letting moments play back in his head like pieces of an unfinished puzzle. Then, something clicked. A name, a profile, the late-night conversations, the sudden ghosting. Minjun's heart thudded in his chest, and for a moment, the crowd around him disappeared. Could it be? Was this the woman he'd casually chatted with online just weeks ago? The one who vanished without warning? A face he thought he'd never see again, and never expected to show up here arm in arm with Jiho, of all people. Minjun's wife, elegant, poised, respected, was seated beside him, engaged in a discussion with a senator. But Minjun wasn't listening.